On this day, 10th of November, 1202, the Fourth Crusade begins the siege of Zara. Zara is a city on the Adriatic coast. It is now part of Croatia. And the Fourth Crusade was called by the Pope, and it took a while to get this crusade together. It was assumed, and it was hoped, and it was aimed for that they would have around 33,000 men, and instead of doing what the Crusades usually did, which was march through Anatolia and then down into the Levant, which was a long journey and quite hostile, that they instead would take a fleet from Venice and go towards Egypt, which was the most powerful Muslim power at the time. They would attack and conquer at least the capital of Egypt, and perhaps all of it, and then they would march north to Jerusalem and liberate it once again from the Muslim powers that be. That was the plan. England and France were beating each other around the head at this point in time. There were various wars and struggles in what is the Holy Roman Empire. People were distracted. They weren't all that interested in sending troops or men or knights or spending a lot of money on sending hundreds or thousands of men east to take Jerusalem. And so, instead of the 33,000 that were expected, about 12,000 men turned up at Venice. Now, Venice was in a bit of a bind. Egypt was one of Venice's great trading partners. So, agreeing to provide the fleet, as well as the many thousands of men that were needed to man the ships, meant that Venice would lose out economically quite big time with Egypt. And remember, it was through Egypt that much of the trade from what is now Yemen, South Arabia, and India, the Indian coast, Malabar, and even further afield from the Far East, came through Egypt and then up to Venice, and then it would be distributed throughout Europe. So it was going to be a big loss, sacrifice for the Venetians. But they needed to be paid, and they needed to be paid properly. They insisted on being paid in full. They had provided all the ships necessary to the 33,000 men, and the horses, the 5,000 horses, and all the food and all the arms and everything that they would need for their war. And the Crusaders, well, they obviously didn't want to pay full price. There's only half of them. So they didn't like the idea of that. So there are various arguments, and eventually Dandolo, the Doge of Venice, tried to get them to do some dirty work for him. He was joining the Crusades. He was old and he was blind. One of the greatest of Doges that Venice has had. He was also ambitious. So he wanted to use this great big army to put the fear of God into various trading ports on the Adriatic, especially a place called Zara, or what is now Zadar. Now, it had been ruled by Venice for a while, but they rebelled, and the Hungarian king had become their protector. So, and the Hungarian king was a Catholic. Zara, the city, was Catholic. Using the Crusades to attack a Catholic city protected by a Catholic king might not look too good. Now, the Pope got word of this, so this must have been news. It couldn't have been a secret if everyone was hearing about it and the Pope heard about it. He wrote a letter to the Crusaders telling them that they must not attack or terrorize any Christian power or any Christians within a country. Now, there's some people saying that the letter didn't get there on time. There are some saying, well, maybe Dandolo got it and kept it to himself. What we do know is that on the 10th of November 1202, the Fourth Crusade arrived at Zara. Dandolo was leading them, well, probably not leading them into battle, but leading them from behind. And the people of Zara were trying to explain and trying to show that they were Catholic too. They put crosses on their houses and in their windows, on the gates of their city. They made it very, very clear that they were Christians as well. Didn't really matter. On the 24th of November, the city fell, and there was quite a lot of looting and pillaging. And pillaging includes more than just looting. So this became an outrage, and the Pope excommunicated the entire crusade. Some of the guys, the leaders of the crusade, appealed this later on and said that they'd been forced to do it by the Venetians, so he revoked the excommunication for everyone except the Venetians. Very nice. So, after pillaging this place, they decided to settle down there for the winter. So they had come the grand total from Venice down to Zara, which today would probably be a 2-day journey on a cruise ship, and decided to stay there for a few months amongst people they had pillaged and looted, which I'm sure they were very enthusiastic about. This is also the very same crusade that ended up going on to conquer Constantinople and loot and pillage that place. Dandolo himself was there again, very enthusiastically a part of it. Now, he might have an excuse to having wanted to do this. There had been a massacre of the Latins a few years earlier, where Venetians, amongst others, had been massacred in Constantinople because they resented the Venetians and their power and their wealth. But also, perhaps, he didn't want to spoil Venice's trade with Egypt. And perhaps he thought it would be easier to go to Constantinople and sort out his old gripes with them instead. So, and just so you know, not all of the Crusaders were a part of this. Some of the Crusaders decided to go from other ports and go straight to the Holy Land. There was Simon de Montfort, who refused at Venice and went to the Holy Land himself. So there were some who didn't do this, weren't involved. But yes, the Fourth Crusade, not the best of them. So on the 10th of November 1202, the Siege of Zara begins. If you like these videos, come back for more. Subscribe, comment, and like.